All right, hello everybody. So today we'll be having a panel discussion with the topic on game development in the age of live services. And together with me we have Srini from Dot9 Games, SJ from that game company, and Ali from Star what again?
Stable.
Star Stable. All right, so sorry about that. Okay, so I'm just gonna give a quick introduction to myself, and the rest of the panelists will do their rounds as well, and then we'll dive right in. So I'm Ivan. I'm the lead producer at the Doodle People, where I manage project scope and timelines, typical of a producer job, and occasionally I dabble in game design to help out. So in general, the Doodle People is a creative tech studio where we develop immersive experiences from AR, VR, MR, and we also dabble in mobile game development as well. Now handing it over to Srini.
Hey, hi, I'm Srini. I'm one of the co-founders for Dot9 Games. We specialize in making mobile games, specifically multiplayer, on doing gaming for more than 20 years now. So a lot of and a programmer at heart. So that's who I am. And we also work on VR projects as well. So it's both it's mobile plus VR. And working on a shooter game right now, which soon to be launched. So that's who I am.
All right, now SJ, do you want to take it away?
Yeah, hey, this is SJ from That Game Company. We're a US-based studio, and our studio is dedicated to creating timeless interactive entertainment that inspires human connection worldwide. I'm the head of corporate development at That Game Company, focused on business strategy, investments, partner relationship, as well as some publishing efforts. Very happy to be here.
Very nice to have you as well. Ali, it's your go.
Yeah. Hello, everyone. My name is Ali. I'm a senior producer at Star Stable Entertainment. I have 4 teams, mainly building technology for our game. Our game been around for 13 years now. Can you believe that? And it's live service game. So that's why I'm super excited about this topic. Our game is available on Mac, Windows, Android, iOS, cross-platform. And we have our in-house engine, tools, server architect, even scripting language as well. So that's me, senior producer for a few teams, try to bridge between the business vision and goals and the teams as well too. We all align.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone. So without further ado, let's dive right in. And I guess to answer the main topic of today, which is game development in the age of live services. So we are in games, and we know that games is a business besides, just having fun. So how does the age of this live service affect the way that you or your company develop games? So does anyone want to take the lead on this?
So maybe I can go and maybe start off. So I think it's become more like live services, more like you have to keep the game always on its high gear, right? You need to continuously develop it as and when, even post launch. And that provides your studio needs to be geared up for it. We are always in, as I would say, constant mode of anxiety to ship the next update or ship the next patch or give the new content. Everything is happening parallelly. And that's where I think the challenge arrives in a live services game. So you're not only doing hot fixes, but you also have to prepare for what the community is asking for the next update, as well as supporting maybe newer platforms suddenly if they just drop on your shoulder as well. So it's what I would say is you'll have to manage multiple challenges at the same point of time, and the studio needs to be geared for it. And I think that's the challenge which, as a studio, when you're working on a live services game, you need to be creative first of all to handle it, rather than being very technical and maybe with like a surgeon, you're like with precision you're executing. I think it's more creative involved to handle the situation and to decide which say fixes which needs to go first, right? Or which updates which needs to go first. Also, what to an incremental content update, like when we are developing a shooter game specifically for us, it's always been like you have to throw a new content every 4 weeks, and every 4 weeks is tough to put in new content, right? You have to like figure out first of all what the community is asking, and there's a huge pipeline set to it, right? And today's games are very complex as well. You have to drop it, right? It's almost a CDN working at the backdrop, right? You have to drop updates on your servers, maybe do a kind of an A/B testing with a specific cohort and see whether what these particular users want to see versus the other users, or what your high-paying users want to see versus anyone else. And there's a constant way of data science involved as well, and that is challenging, and that's what I think every studio in this field has to go through.
Right. Thank you for your insights. Indeed. So I guess one thing that's quite interesting and would brings to mind is that game company, right, transitioned from an indie premium kind of model into a live service model. So would you mind sharing with the rest of us, like, how was it for that game company, how they made the transition, and what were there any significant changes that were made in your monetization or development models as well?
Yeah, that's a great question. So for us, taking a step back, the reason that we want to go free to play and also wanted to do mobile first was because we wanted to take that artistic feeling, that human connection, not only to our hardcore PC gamers, but also to people who never play the games. So like our game is pretty simple from a gameplay perspective, but it really inspire the human connection and trying to put the emotional impact onto people so people can make genuine connections in our game. It's a social adventure. So from that perspective, we feel like mobile is the best platform to go to, just because the total addressable market of mobile game currently has with iOS and Android. And now we're going not only on both mobile platforms, but also we're on Nintendo Switch, PlayStation, and recently early access on Steam as well. So definitely it's very hard, because in the past when we developed the game, like our last premium title Journey, we focused 100% on the creativity part. We wanted to tell a good story. We wanted to do innovative gameplay. So we can take time, because there's no time like schedule for that, because like as Srini mentioned, like you guys deliver the game in 4 weeks, we deliver that every 6 weeks. Like when we changed that over to live services, we had the issue at the very beginning, like how we beat that. I think it's a fine balance between having a production schedule, a rigorous production schedule, and creativity at the same time. I think that's very important. We have to sacrifice one thing over the other at some point, and trying to make sure that we still deliver what we wanted to show to the players, but in the meantime to keep up with the schedule. The other part about live services is we wanted to make sure that we have this world being persistent, so people can come and go, and whenever they feel like, oh, I miss guy, I want to come back, they will find it's pretty easy to pick up. By doing a UGC tool, which in our game, that is helping us to not only continue to create those, professional content that we wanted to deliver to people, but also in the meantime, having those tools, people can create their own stuff, and like I can create it for my friends. So when they come back, they can actually see that. So that actually reinforce the connections. It's easier from a live service perspective. So you don't have to, stack the content over and over, which is a pretty high pressure on the developers and also the designers, the production team. And the last part I want to touch on is what you mentioned about monetization. Like obviously in the prior model, we just sell like boxes, like we sell digital copies. That's like a pretty like simple business model. But when we go into the live services, we try to develop different tools and different approaches when it comes to monetization. But one thing in our game, we don't like gacha, to be honest, just because we don't like the way the possibility, like the probability plays kind of the monetization game. Instead, we try to price everything at a fixed price, so you know what you are buying with certain price. I think that transparency really helped us to gain the trust from our community and also getting us, continuous and recurring revenue. And on top of that, because of the live operation part, we also have the season pass. We don't have battle, we don't have violence in our game, so we call it season pass. So every season, there's four seasons a year, and we will put out a package for people, so not only they can complete the seasonal quest, but also getting reward from that season. So that's how we approach the live operation part. But obviously, we're still learning because we started our live operation in around 2019, and now it's about 5 years old. So we're still adopting a little bit new things here and there. So hopefully can learn, from others here and see if there's any better approach we can take on as well.
Awesome. Thank you for your insight and sharing about the process for That Game Company. So on that note, Ali, do you have anything to share, with SJ on that, especially considering that, Star Stable has operated your game for 13 years now, you mentioned?
Yeah, exactly. Actually, I really agree with what the colleague said. We have been pushing weekly update for 13 years, which is 650 something. We never missed a week, but that's something. What I want to say, I feel the live service is getting more business direction right now. So more studios are trying to switch or try live service for the first time, and this is a really learning curve here. Like what the colleague said, and a lot of you always need to see like 5 steps ahead. You need to always invest in whatever you're doing because it's going to be reused. Let's say a framework for a season pass or a system for the backend, so you can push updates way faster, especially if you're on mobile and you need to go through review process. There's a lot. So it doesn't matter how we have seen some solid names try it live service. Sadly, didn't fly that well. The learning curve is kind of steep. It takes some time to understand the difference between live service and one time or whatever model. So just wanted to say, I kind of really agree, and it's a completely different mindset. So if there's studios doing this for a long time, it's gonna be a lot easier. If they are doing it for the first time, there's a lot of things they need to have in mind, especially if they are on multiple platforms.
All right, so very interesting. We do have some questions coming in from the floor. I think I'll take one question right now, just to mention, from Albert Khan. How do you manage canary deployment strategies, like testing new features with a set of beta users and then rolling out to production? So I think this goes quite in line with what you mentioned, Ali, on having backend systems that can support this. So would you mind elaborating?
Oh yeah, 100%. Oh, I love this question. I used to be QA lead, so I'm super passionate about this topic. When you work in a live service, especially the content of the game is keep expanding. If it's just, let's say, MMO in our case, so we always have more content will be added. At some point, manual testing it won't be enough. So you need to automate. So what we did, we start to automate as much as possible. We increased the level of testing. So we start to deploy nightly builds. We invested a lot in our auto test. So every night our game starts and do the full onboarding, that's also super crucial. If you're building a live service game, onboarding is crucial because you don't lose any players. Losing a player in a single player game, it's a loss, of course, but if you lose it on live service, it's a bigger loss because you want to keep the players as much as possible. So we have our different testing levels and plus testing environments. So we have a test environment for production, we have alpha, we have beta. So we have internal embedded QA engineers in each team. So as soon as the devs are done with their task or it's a bug fixing, verified or validated by the QA engineer internally, we build a package, we send it to the release QA. The production is 4 weeks ahead. So whatever we build today will go out to the player in 1 month, which gives enough time to our release QA to actually spend some time and try to find out if there's all good or something we need to iterate on. So basically just extra level of testing, invest in your auto test. You definitely need to have a QA engineer in each team. That's no question. You need to have a manual tester in your teams, 100%, to have the development as fast as possible.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing. So this is actually something that I guess I would like to bring up and just talk about it a little bit because you mentioned on automation. So automation is one of the biggest things that has been kicking up in intensity over the last few years. We're automating testing. We're automating even the players themselves are automating the gameplay with bots, right? So on that note, AI is probably the next step towards this. Do you think AI has a place in live service games? Anyone?
When you say AI, it's like you're asking to be controversial already. I have been in this topic in AI and game development for so long. I say AI, perfect fit for finding data when you see data in crash reports to understand the data positions, do some like heat maps. AI doing an auto test. I mean, we have seen DICE and EA, they have a lab that runs the game like 64 versus 60 every night, full server, gathering data. So we have some companies really advanced, and it's not new. They have been doing that for so long. Fully automated AI. I don't see that actually realistic for AA or indie at all. Even though we are seeing more tools coming from commercial engines, I still believe we're not there yet, to be honest. And if your game is super complex, yes, it requires a full team to do that. So it's quite expensive. So I definitely see the future that AI will heavily use in automation. I don't believe we're there yet, especially for mid-sized, smaller studios.
Yeah, like for that AI topic, I think it's two parts. One is on the cost or production side, like for example, art, QA, like even porting, like potentially in the future, AI could take on a lot of those heavy lifting work for us so we can focus on the creativity part. But as Ali mentioned, I don't think we're there yet, at least in like current stage. We've seen some, pretty advanced solution these days in the testing period, and there are different studios trying to figure out how to use AI in their pipeline. But so far it's more trialing, it's more testing, but we haven't seen massive adoption at least across the industry, to my knowledge. And the other part about AI is more on the, I would call it the revenue side or the business side. For example, you put a smart NPC in the game that can actually impact the gameplay, or you use AI to create a core game loop that can increase, the playability of the game. I think that's even far down the road after the cost part of AI. So like overall, I think I'm, optimistic about the future of AI in gaming, but at this point right now, people are still exploring that. And also one point Ali mentioned, it was very valid. It's the cost. Even like right now, if for example QA, we could use AI to do a lot of stuff potentially, but like using a all-sourced vendor or we have a developer like tailored QA team in-house, may be more cost-effective at this point.
Hi, thank you so much. You did literally summarize. I'm not going to mention any studios. We say hi to all the colleagues. The downside working in the gaming industry. There's one of the biggest AAA studios in the world. I had the pleasure to chat with them. So I asked about AI, generative AI. They said we don't use any generative AI at the company right now, but they have a full team dedicated to keep track of the trends, investing in knowledge, research. But yeah, I don't see any, like I said, mid-sized, smaller studio will be able to do that. So yes, the bigger studios are aware of the potential. They're spending millions and millions to be up to speed when things are developing and evolving. But at the moment, I agree with SJ. I feel like actually having on-site professionals a lot more cost-efficient and more realistic.
Thank you for sharing that. Srini, do you have anything to add on this topic? If not, I would like to transition to something else.
No, I think AI has been spoken of quite loud over here. So I think we should move to the next part.
Awesome, no worries. So I think this actually pertains to your game you're working on quite a bit as well. So this comes from a question from the floor. Maria Schmidt has posted this. What are the primary advantages and challenges of implementing live services in game development, particularly in terms of player engagement and monetization?
So as I said, like in live services, right? You need to maybe when you're looking at say player engagement, it's all about watching the player, what his experience has been, say every moment he gets on board. When the player gets on board, and then what's the progression going to be, right, over a period of time. And especially for a game like ours, which is a shooter game, and which we need to track, say, a simple metric like, say, retention and the time being spent, right? So you need to track like, hey, when this player starts with the journey, like it could be like the first time install, and where the FTUE is taking the player through the journey through the game, right? And where it is breaking off. Like maybe there is too many instructions being thrown at the player. Maybe it doesn't want, and there's no skip button to skip it. It could be even as trivial as that. Or it could be where we are not pointing the player into a direction where, without experiencing that, he didn't even know like there's a grenade option to like, to throw at the player. It could be as maybe that's the most fun element in the game, but you would never use it. You're just maybe just taking a gun and just going everywhere, right? Maybe there's no strategy. You kind of in subtly you need to like egg him with all of these different design choices which the design team has taken, but it's never been, you are understanding from the data, like it's never been used at all. So I think with across all of these data points, specifically player engagement, you need to like kind of figure out from your funneling. It's more on data science, right? You'll have a bunch of analysts even internally as a team as well, whose only job is to non-stop look at the data and then say, okay, where the drops are, why the player left the game, or if he's playing the game, why is he not, if the game was designed to use certain feature sets, why is he not using it? Okay, and if it is crucial to the game, if you feel like that is, maybe if he's not using it, he may not stay engaged with the game for maybe even for a couple of minutes or maybe even a couple of hours. After that, he's going to get bored and he's going to drop off, right? If the player, then you need to like try to egg him to go in that direction. And I think those are the challenges what you need to try to build in these folks. So we have in our games um, a kind of like I wouldn't call it notification, because nowadays no one accepts notification, right? Meaning it's almost like a first thing you do is you want to say no to notifications. But in game you need to like figure out where there are these pop-ups. What we have, because it's live service, we can control messages which needs to be shown, say, on certain areas of the screen, which will kind of, it could be like the loading bar, it could be at the after the game end screen, it could be at the menu screen as well when he's coming and doing some meta aspect of the game, where we throw these subtle text messages and pop-ups in like, hey, could you try this particular feature, or could you try this particular weapon or this particular style of gameplay? I think that's something modules you need to start building into the game, so that you don't have to update the game with every time a new patch in. And that's where I think it's become part and parcel of the entire player engagement journey. Just adding to the monetization side, monetization has a similar thing what I said to the gameplay as well, right? When you're trying engagement. In monetization, you need to figure out, like in our country over here, where we are very popular with something called as sachet pricing. So sachet pricing is basically at 1/10 or maybe even 1/100 the cost of, say, a simple a power up or a skin what you equip, right? Like when you look at Call of Duty as well, one of the first in-app purchases what they do is an double XP card. But double XP card helps you to like level up really fast, right? And it's available for like maybe not even 10 cents. Over here in India, it's almost like 10 rupees. So that's like the initial kick in where you get in, and it's valid for 2 hours. So it's a pretty good time for you to like, level up from wherever you are. You can notch up to quite a high level up by doing a small microtransaction to get into the game. So you need to like have, in terms of monetization, to experiment all of these what I call a sachet pricing inside your game, and you have to be so that it doesn't become more expensive. Because if you notice nowadays, most in-apps nowadays are like really expensive. Like to if you are a player who's not wearing the best gear, you might get even bullied today, right? You may not like find players to come in and play, hey, you don't have this particular skin or this particular attire, I may not even have you in my clan or in my group, right? So you need to make it accessible. And our game is not a pay to win, so it's a completely cosmetic driven primarily. So that gives you, and plus the sachet pricing kinds of enables you to like still remain relevant in terms of a business side of the things, as well as from a gamer side of experience, to just make sure like it's accessible to a wide variety of audience.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing. So one thing I would like to sort of bring up here is that we've been talking about, data analytics a lot, about looking at how you want to monetize your players, or how you study the data behind monetizing your players, and most importantly, I guess, retaining them, because without players in the first place, who is there to monetize, right? And we all know that player drops off quite quickly because new games keep coming out like every other day, every after week. There's like 10 new games. So here's one thing. Besides competing with other games, it has come to the industry's attention in general is that we have some competitors outside of the game industry. And what we call these unusual competitors are actually also, competing for the precious time and attention of our gamers. So what are your thoughts on this, Ali?
Yeah, well, really amazing point. Netflix said a few days ago or something in an article, our biggest competitor is Fortnite. And everyone's like, wait a second, it's not HBO. They literally said Fortnite is more competing with them compared to HBO Max, which is quite mind-blowing. It's a streaming service and a game. But people start to connect, maybe because Netflix have their own game department. It's not the case, because everyone is fighting for the time right now. And Fortnite managed to actually keep the players for years now very successfully. So we need to understand there's two parts of the unusual competitors. First of all, the gaming studios who never been in the live service space before, and now they decided to jump to it, and we have a really big names in that space. And now everyone is competing for everyone's time, from social media, from streaming services, from you name it. So it's getting harder and harder to keep the sessions longer. And this is what the window to keep the players coming back. So you need to increase the quality, and that affects the frequency, which leads to some studios to really accelerate how fast to market they can and how they drop their seasons a lot faster. That's led to kind of half-cooked content. Plus, you see the spike when people ditch the game and they come back when a season drops, then it just goes back again and they jump to next game. I don't believe this cycle is healthy. I believe the only way to stand out is really have something high quality to actually feel the player, everyone I feel like it's worth my time to be there. So because if it's not the case, people will just skip, people will just move on. And that's why also one of the challenges when you do a live service game on mobile, especially on Android, that's what the data shows, that if the players not happy with the onboarding, the first impression, the likelihood to remove your game and move to another game is super high. And I don't believe there's a way to retain these players easily. You need to invest a lot in ads and it's like a really, really low chance to have them back. So there's a lot of factors now in place. We're competing with unusual competitors in and outside the gaming industry. How to keep the player engaged, it's getting a lot harder. We have a full team of AI or business intelligence to help us understand the player behavior. We keep adding content. We need to be very fast. So everything is happening fast. Everything is complicated. So you can understand. You have only a few weeks to understand what you need to do next, so you are aligned with the players' needs. So that's how I see the new competition in the space.
Yeah, we are competing for people's time, and we are content that's no different from music, from short form video, from other interactive or just pure entertainment. The way our studio look at that is it's all emotions behind it. So for example, when you look at movie, it could be a love movie that you feel, oh, this is very touching. It could be a adventure movie, you feel the up and down. And it could be something like super funny and you just want to be happy, you just laugh together with the characters. And we wanted to mimic that emotion in our game. We have different stories. We set up create different land zones so people can hang out with other people. That's all driven by emotions. There's no difference. So to Ali's point, creating that high quality content for people so they can really feel that moment is important for game studios. When you have that good content and when people are here, and with all of these, obviously with localization and also optimization, so that they can really enjoy that on their phone or on their devices, that's competing for their time. But the downside there is, like for example, like TikTok as a platform, it has so much different content, like, and also they have the algorithm to recommend the things that they feel like you really want, that reinforce them to stay, longer, and then keep that retention rate up. So, but game is unique. Like, we are creative people, and we know our players. Hopefully we know them better later. But the point is being, like, we should focus on the content and focus on the quality, just to make sure that when people come, especially for live services, they come once, it's easier for them to, get lost and move forward to something else. So, like, the chance that we have to take on here is, it's very important. It's very valuable. We have to keep them, on the first arrival when they get into the game.
Well said. So basically, to sum it up, retention is the key thing here that we're still fighting against, be it against platforms like TikTok or even Netflix. And user acquisition is relatively speaking not as hard as retention, but definitely still something that we all need to, as game developers, need to try to work towards. And now I would like to also go back down to the floor and see if there's any other interesting questions that we can tackle.
While waiting for to find a good question, the user acquisition is getting more expensive.
It is,
and the best way, it's so expensive. And I was looking at different acquisition models, and viral one is the cheapest and the most effective nowadays by letting people promoting your game. And you can do that when you work on a user acquisition, when you allow the user-generated content, so they can promote your game by showing their content. I would say this is actually a lot cheaper, a lot more effective, and is more engaging for the players too. They feel part of your product. The expenses that you need to spend right now to acquire is it's insanely expensive. Like, sometimes companies loses money to acquire.
It's not only very expensive, but also it's hard to track with IDFA and all the privacy updates.
100%. You don't know. You don't know. Sometimes you don't even know. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Sometimes you don't even know if it's actually worth it or not. And most of the cases, for a fact, I'm spending this amount, because you can see how many users being acquired after a campaign. The campaign costs you this, you acquire this amount, they will pay this, you have lost this, but that's fine. You need to, hopefully they will bring someone else, and just to keep the community alive. So I would say the viral way is the way to go. Definitely, 100%.
Interesting. It definitely works out, I guess, especially when the short form content is trending in general, and that's how viral content kind of really picks up from there. So we have another question from Mara Smith, and they ask about sharing successful examples of live services in games and how they have evolved over time to meet player demands and industry trends. So I guess instead of going into like direct specific examples and diving deep on it, perhaps everyone can share just like a few titles that you know of that your company or you yourself would like to seek inspiration from.
So let's start with the big. I think there was another question mentioning about Warzone, right? Call of Duty Warzone. So maybe let's take an example of Call of Duty, right? Meaning they've been doing live services on there, and it's maybe the highest grossing, I think, at least in the mobile platform, in terms of the revenue they generate, in terms of how to keep the content fresh, and and incorporating community feedback, as well as keeping the season passes going season after season after season, right? It's like a machine, more or less. And obviously it comes with I think that as a job, in terms of, say, from the business side of things, I think they have nailed it more or less, meaning apart from the really sad nature of the recent Warzone's launch. I'm sure they're fixing it, but if you just maybe keep that aside and just think about how they have been able to execute, say, all of the live services stuff, it's just amazing. It's just amazing to look at the number of people involved to make it going, right? Now, the challenge also comes as how many people do you have to like make, even to execute such a game. Now, we are in the, my studio is fighting for the same time and the same genre as say a Call of Duty kind of game. And how do my game needs to stand out, say, compared to say a shooter game which is already existing in the market, right? And that provides us like for our game, we have to like make sure, one is we need to be where they are not able to maybe serve the player better, so we need to maybe be better at that. Like it could be like even say low-end devices, optimization and stuff. Can you make the game run on 60 FPS even on say mid to low-end devices, which their focus is not there much towards that. India is a bigger market. It's pretty wide in terms of the number of Android devices which are there, right? And not many people maybe focus onto it. So we have to find our niches and maybe attack it on that direction. But just generally learnings from what they are doing, and generally also what content they get in to, like, most of the matchmaking, if you just look at even at the COD level, happens via chat window. So moment you open the game, you see a chat window, and the chat window momently say like, hey, join this multiplayer match right now, right? It's just a small button what you see in as soon as you open the game, and you just instantly press and you're into a networking, you're directly into a multiplayer match. It could be even as simple as that, like the chat window is being used so powerfully to say point out to different areas of different games, right? Because they have like tremendous number, more than 30 different modes for you to play around, right? Meaning generally from the shooter genre perspective. So pushing people into different modes, from the back end user, hey, this player hasn't tried maybe this particular mode. Maybe let's give him a multiplayer matchmaking with this particular player in, and let's give him this particular match. He's already is at D3. He's been playing. Maybe he's going to get bored. Maybe he's going to drop off. He's not playing that well enough. And we are all fighting for time, right? So, and then let's maybe expose him to some other area of the gameplay. So that, I think, is a great lesson for us to just learn from the competition and the peers and how they do a good job at it.
I just want to quickly add to this. When you have the framework that you have been using over and over, and you have mastered the quick drops, like in our case, we have been releasing weekly. Releasing every week for us becomes like, it's our game. We don't feel stressed. We don't feel like, oh, tomorrow is a release. It's just, we know how to deal with it. If something happens in life, we have a risk mitigation plan, because it happened multiple times. So that's when you master the craft. But how I see opportunities for smaller studios to jump. Bigger studios, it's a big ship. It's hard to sometimes change course. It takes time because a lot of hierarchy and decisions. And that's BattleBit, a shooting game made by few people. They just implemented what people wanted from X game or whatever shooting games combined. And they saw, okay, so people just want this. Okay, let's give them that. So they just nailed the feeling and what people were just asking for so many years and never happened from AAA studios. And look at them. They, at some point, they were like literally top 10 games on Steam for a couple of months. So I would say I see actually opportunity for us to double a smaller studio when we see the bigger names are not listening to the players, not because they're ignoring them, because it's hard to tweak. They have systems in place. Building a system for the new features will take maybe actually could take years sometimes. It's that massive. So that's how I just want to add that point.
All right, thank you very much for your comments. SJ, do you have anything you'd like to add on that? Any particular games that that game company is look up to, or it doesn't have to be a game, it can be any other kind of form of entertainment media, perhaps?
Yeah, I think we tend to reference more in terms of the movie industry, because we like to, talk about the emotional part, and movie is the direct comparison there. But just go back to the question very specifically on kind of live services examples on games. This is not for like TGC, like that game company, but like personally, I feel inspired by about 2 examples here. One, if you look at Supercell, they gave a GDC talk this year about learnings from the removal of loot box. That is directly related to monetization. If by any chance you could watch that talk, that's very inspiration for me, where how they kind of tweak their monetization model, starting from the beginning, doing what everyone is doing, loot box, and trying to capture that revenue. But over time, they find the core user base and how they spend their money in the game, and trying to optimize the way they monetize people, and how to treat people fairly. I think I saw a question on that part as well, and that is a very very good real world example on how to improve your monetization over time. The other example I would give, again, personal experience, is Ike Party from NetEase. They have a UGC tool in the game where after they start by developing that tool only for like in-game maps, but later over time you can create literally everything with that tool, like over a 1 year development. That's a very powerful tool, not only for people to be creative and to create like UGC content in the game, but also go back to the viral point. It also create like viral like marketing tools for people. Oh, I create this super cool map and I post it on like TikTok, and people are following me and just giving me likes just because my creation. I think that healthy like flywheel is trying to combining the efforts from the development side as well as the publishing side, so you're like literally like increasing your efficiency when it comes to lab operation. So I think that would be my 2 examples, like again personal examples on like lab operation part. But obviously there are so many good lab operation games out there. I think some of them like they definitely have their own advantages. That's why they stand out like so well in the current market. It's like very competitive market these days.
Awesome. Thank you very much. So we're nearing the end. Actually, we're running over time on the panel discussion. So I'd just like to spend just a few more minutes to quickly sum it up and bring it all together for everyone that's listening. And I'm so sorry that we couldn't cover every single question. And some questions are perhaps a bit too specific for like certain game genres, some game niches. But in general, on the topic of game development in the live services age, mainly one of the biggest things that we are facing is competition both inside and outside of our industry. And one of the best ways that as game companies, what we can do, regardless of how big or how small, is basically, I guess, be more efficient. Some ways are to use automation. Some ways are to also rely on perhaps frameworks that supplement UGCs, because UGCs can also help players express better, and they can also then serve as your ambassadors, right? Your viral marketing tools as they go out and advertise your game on your behalf. And on top of user acquisition, the next step is retention, where the main thing now is that how do we understand our players? Then the next step is to come into how you study your players through data sets, through your data scientists, data analytics, finding out ways that they like to spend time in your game, how they would like to spend money on your game, and tweaking your frameworks, tweaking your design to match them, finding your core niche players that will be loyal. And last but not least, not betraying their trust, making sure you make the game fun for them, and so they want to stay on. And with that, I think these are some of the key takeaways that I believe this panel has sort of shared with each other. I've learned a lot from our fellow panelists here. So any final things you would like to add before we conclude this panel?
I think we did a decent job of answering some of the queries. Actually, that's a good part, at least from the entire session.
Yeah,
I
agree. I just want to thank everyone for taking the time and listen to us, and hopefully they end up with taking at least one insight back to your studios, your teams, and yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you so much as well.
All right, thank you all for your time, and we will see you again someday, somewhere in the game industry.
Hello.